Welcome to another episode of Inspire People, Impact Lives. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and my guest today, Josh Shaw. We share a first name, but our stories are very, very different, and I'm really excited to have Josh on the show. He's a lifelong entrepreneur, has built multiple seven-figure businesses, and now has his sights on tackling mental health, which is a passion of mine as well. So I'm really excited to get into this with Josh, and it'll be repetitive as I don't often say my own name, so it's kind of weird coming out of my mouth. I'm usually called Josh. So Josh, welcome to the show.
How you doing? Thanks a lot for having me.
I'm really excited to get into this with you. So there's a lot that we want to tackle, and especially as we were talking pre-show about mental health and then what you guys are building. But let's get into a little bit of your backstory and tell some our audience about you and where you came from and where you are today.
Okay. Well, grew up in a small town called Sheboygan, Wisconsin. It's kind of right in between Green Bay and Milwaukee. Grew up in a troubled home, left me in kind of a dark spot for a long time, which I grew up in then group homes, juvenile detention centers, and then found myself in the adult penitentiary, where my father committed suicide, and I kind of had a life-changing moment at that time where I realized I'm not the man I want to be, and I'm not in a place I ever want to be again. So I had to make a decision to change, and I did that. And I also knew that I had to redefine myself. Since I wasn't the man I wanted to be, I had to redefine myself to the man I wanted to become. And that's essentially what I did. So I started taking these big steps in my life. I built a business to $6 million in annual revenue, sold it, exited, and then started my passion project, which is the mental health industry.
So can we go back to the prison part? Your dad died by suicide while you were in prison?
Yes.
How long were you in prison for?
2.5 years.
Okay. And about what juncture in prison did that life-changing event happen?
Probably about 8 months into my stint.
Okay. So that happens. I've never been to prison before, so I'm imagining. How do you receive that news?
Well, you get a phone call, and it's weird because you're not allowed to get phone calls. Something's going down, right? Yeah. So they call me in, and I hop on the phone, and it's nothing but a lot of hyperventilating and crying, and it's my mom saying, "Your dad, he's dead." And I just automatically I thought it might be a car accident, But as we got I just started kind of crying because either way, he's gone, But then I found out it was suicide. So that just completely wrecked me. Going back to a cell, no one to hug, talk to, and kind of trying to deal with a lot of emotion by myself, and having all these flashbacks of what kind of son I was, just destroyed me.
So I don't want to make this difficult for you. I didn't even know where to go there. I'm just really curious about how old were you at that time?
I was either 21 or 22 at the time. Okay. If I was 22, I just turned 22.
And you can't grieve, I feel like, properly because you can't even go to the funeral.
No, I can't go to the funeral, and you really, you can't show weakness. If you show weakness, that's a cage in which people will eat that up. It's hard to cry. It's hard to show your emotions when you're in there.
So, yeah, and I can only imagine. So I'm thinking about this life-changing matter. Like, you just lost your father. You just talked about how you felt as a son, and maybe as a shortcomings as a son to him. What propelled you then to be the person coming out of that? Like, you could have, the statistics on going back to prison for repeat offenders are very, very high. Mm-hmm. The recidivism rate. You weren't able to properly grieve, properly show weakness, like you said. Mm-hmm. So how did you overcome that and really change to be the person that is able to start a business, build a business, get out of all that darkness? What steps did you take for someone that might be in a really dark spot right now?
Well, after the self-pity that you go through, after the self-pity you go through, you start to realize, shit, my brother's probably going through the same shit. My sister, what about my mom? Not to mention, I'm also in a spot where, they're worried about me being in here. So my being in there just made their situation worse. So after I came out of the self-pity, I started to realize I need to help them. So, I went through a lot of forgiveness. I think that's probably one of the first steps that I went through is forgiving myself and others.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Forgiving yourself.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. And then taking responsibility. Taking responsibility because we can only change ourselves, right? So I go into every situation trying to figure out how much responsibility I can take for this. Because if I want that situation to change, that means me taking more responsibility. And so, responsibility is a big one. And then it's essentially defining what it is you want out of life. And for me at that moment, it was to never come back to that situation. So essentially, I just wanted to be, to live by society's norms. And that meant stay out of trouble. So that was my ultimate goal coming out. And I accomplished that. I built a business and I kind of hit this plateau in life where I was waking up and I was doing better than all my peers and probably, people who had raised me like uncles and all that, so a lot of family too. I was doing better than all them. And I was plateauing because, I was almost fooled by, little success. And I started waking up every day. I'm like, is this what it's all about? Waking up, if I can go in to bust your ass at work, coming back. And it just felt like I had more to go out and get. I had more potential in me, and I started grabbing books and really digging into personal development, which just kind of blew me up.
So, how, family members wise, you mentioned your sister and brother. Are you the oldest?
I'm the oldest, yeah.
Okay. So, how's your relationship with those siblings now, and how have you affected their lives being out of prison and moving forward and being as successful as you've become?
So that's kind of a difficult one because for so long, I just thought if I just make enough money, I can get my brother best treatment center, because he struggles with heroin addiction. I can get my sister the help that she needs. I can provide her kids the stuff that, she's not able to. My mom, she's been, every sort of abuse, sexually, mentally, and physically throughout her whole life. So she's not a stable person to actually help them through it. So I just thought if I just buy my mom a house and do this and just kind of throw some money around, I can solve a lot of problems. And, money solves problems, but it doesn't solve all, right? So I started to realize like money's not solving some of these problems, but what's different about me compared to them, because we're from the same spot. But what's different about me? And I realized it was mindset. So I wanted to create a platform in which people can go to and start to learn the tools and techniques that I use and apply them to my life, so that everybody else can do the same thing.
Do you remember the first book you picked up when you hit that plateau?
I think what really stuck to me was probably Think and Grow Rich. But there was other ones like The Alchemist and a couple ones like that. But what really stuck to me is probably Think and Grow Rich. That was probably the biggest self-development book. And it talked a lot about like manifestation, which after reading it, I started to realize what I was doing and started noticing changes around me. And after I started noticing, I'm like, if this is real, then let's go big.
That's awesome. What's really awesomely coincidental about that was the first like self-development book I read.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was your first, but that was the first one that came to mind for you. And so I was 21 years old, 22 years old, somewhere around that time frame. And my dad had given me that book.
Yeah.
And I was walking around as a Smoothie King that my parents had owned, and I was managing it. And I was walking around reading that book in between serving customers. I couldn't put it down.
It's crazy.
So it was fun. I still remember the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle today, and won't ever forget it. There's certain things. I actually got recommended to reread that book because it's been over a decade.
Yeah, same here.
So I got to get back to that. But so the hardships really prepared you, I think, is like Ed Milet always says, like life happens for us, not to us, right? So it's one of those things where you went through some tough stuff. You watched a lot of tough stuff with your family members, and now you're starting to create a platform. And let's just hop into that because I think it's so inspiring. What's the platform called? What are you guys building? When is it going to be available for public to utilize and be impacted by? Sure.
So the company that we're forming is Mental Wealth Investments. We really want people to start investing in their mental wealth because the ROI is endless, really. I believe a good person is surrounded by three things. It's mind, body, spirit. We have church for the spirit. We have the gyms for our body, which has been a big wave and a big movement in the last decade. But we're really missing that mental health space. So the company's called Mental Wealth Investments. It's a range of 10 to 20 different interactive training platforms or programs in there. Programs on self-esteem, confidence, relationships, parenting, grieving, whatever it is that you would actually go see a therapist or a psychologist for is essentially the programs that we want to create inside this platform so that individuals can get access to it for, $10, $20 a month.
That's phenomenal. And from what I hear, you're working on it with some really big people. Can you share that?
Yeah. So Bradley, owner of Lightspeed VT, is the actual host of the interactivity that Mental Wealth Investments is going to be on.
And how did you guys link up?
A mastermind.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved with the mastermind? Was that through some of the plateaus after selling the company?
Yeah. So after books and stuff like that, I just really started gravitating to more and more stuff. I believe that that it's proximity in who you're surrounding yourself with. So after you kind of dig into your personal growth, you start to notice things, like things change around you. Then you start to kind of notice people, and you start to realize, like, I need better people in my life to think the same way I'm thinking, to kind of help me to a different level. And the only way we're going to do that is by helping each other out. But I didn't have a lot of people around me to do that. So I started getting more involved in, seminars, books, programs, masterminds, and that's where I met Bradley.
So maybe it was this one, but what was the most meaningful mastermind that you became a part of? What was it called, or who hosted it? Or I don't know if you want to give a shout out to it.
There's not one in particular, but I think they're all really good for me. Even doing masterminds down in my own basement, where we wipe the board and we just start fucking planning our life or business. So for me, like any sort of mastermind, I mean, we could sit here and go over a goal and figure out how we're going to hit $1 billion, and I'd fucking whip my coat off and start drawing on the board to figure it out. And then
we'll use the windows.
Yeah,
we'll use dry erase. We'll use the windows.
Yeah. So that's my passion, is just to really think and try to, like, personal growth. Finding our potential is my passion. So any sort of masterminding is my favorite.
So the reason I want to key on it is I think that they're really crucial, and not enough people invest in them. Mm-hmm. Right. So I know that, like, Dan Sullivan, and there's these other companies out there that run these national mastermind groups. Darren Hardy, that used to run Success Magazine. I've been to one of his, and you meet some unbelievable people.
Yeah.
And obviously you meet Brad Lee, who hosts one of the greatest podcasts out there as well. So, like, you just have no idea who you're going to run into when you do this. But it's being vulnerable and also being willing to invest in yourself, because some of them cost quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
It could cost you 5-6 figures a year to join some of these things, and you got to be willing to do that. And A, be willing to fork over the cash, but B, like, really think about it as an investment in yourself. Byproduct could be it could lead to something awesome like what you're creating now, or it could lead to other business opportunities or whatever it may be. But I think mastermind groups are really crucial, and that's why I just want to take a moment to talk about them.
Absolutely. Not only masterminds, but also mentorship. I think a lot of people don't value it because it's like money. It's like they don't want to trade their money for the knowledge, but they want the knowledge. But they won't value the knowledge unless they pay for the knowledge, but they don't want to pay for the knowledge. It's
a weird dichotomy.
Yeah, it is weird, and it's beyond me. But I think if an individual just really wants to tap into it, they should start maybe trying books and then reach into some mentorship, because you really need that mental guidance, as for someone to kind of pull you out of your own picture and let you see it for what it is, without being caught in your realm. Because you can get guidance from friends and stuff like that, but it's going to be influenced based on what they already know.
Yeah. And I love what you were saying about the people that you surround yourself with. So you came from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Your company was in Wisconsin. And Wisconsin has a really special DNA, a hardworking culture. that comes from Wisconsin, from our sports programs to the farming community to the businesses that grow up here. So I don't want to take anything away because I love this great state, but there's some big ideas and big people in some bigger cities outside of Wisconsin. It looks like that's where you went and found some stuff, or it looks like you wanted to get out of this, or where you felt like a plateau. So I love that, like, and if you go to one of these groups, you could be the bottom rung. Yeah. But I think that's actually where you want to be.
Exactly.
It's like you're looking up at all these people that are doing bigger things, and you're looking at yourself going, man, I got a lot more potential to hit.
Yeah. If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And so it's reading, like you mentioned, listening to podcasts, hopefully this one, but I mean, Brad Lee's great. I already mentioned Ed Milet, Lewis Howes, Rachel Hollis, like all these people have great podcasts. And then there's probably some local ones in other people's areas that I don't even know about yet that are awesome. It's just continuing to sharpen the saw is one of Stephen Covey's 7 core habits. So law of attraction, Chad told me the story about a pen. Oh, yeah, we got to tell the audience about your pen.
Yeah, so when I got out of prison, I kind of came out with some debt because I wasn't paying bills, of course, because I was in the penitentiary. And I went to go see an attorney to get me out of debt. And as I was signing the paperwork, he gave me this nice pen to sign the paperwork with. And I held on. And I'm like, damn, this is a nice pen. And he says to me, you like that pen? You can have it. And I kind of smiled. And I said, thanks. And I said, you know what? This is going to be my new $1 million pen. And we both kind of laughed and chuckled it off. But 10 years later, I ended up signing my biggest contract, which is a $2.2 million contract. It was actually Attic Angel right down the road here where we did their roofs, and I signed that contract with that pen.
You still have that pen?
I still have the pen. And I still signed multi-million-dollar deals with it today.
That's awesome. And it's what you think about. I think of that Jim Carrey story. I don't remember if it was a speech or it was a talk he was given, but he carried around a $10 million check in his wallet because that's what he felt his worth was as an actor. And then I think it was Ace Ventura, maybe the second one, where he was actually employed for $10 million, but he wrote that check to himself. Yeah. And he carried around his wallet. He said it was tattered, like by the time he actually earned the $10 million. Yeah. But that's that law of attraction, really putting out there a big goal, big thought, and just relentlessly pursuing it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yep.
Because that's the thing. I think the book The Secret. Did you ever read that?
I haven't. No.
It's good in thought, and it's about mindset and becoming what you think about. But the thing that I think it misses is action. Sure. Is actually taking actionable steps towards that thought, towards that goal, whatever you have out there. So you and I could whiteboard or window board all of our thoughts to that $1 billion idea until one of us takes an action step towards it. Yeah. It's never going to happen.
Yeah. But it does help writing it out, and then it also helps keeping it up because as you walk into your office every morning, you kind of glance out the window like, oh yeah, that. Oh yeah, that. And then by the time you know it, you start kind of, you see it on a regular basis where it tends to help you gravitate towards it more to where it was, and you start realizing opportunities that connect to that. Like, oh yeah, this can connect to that. And then by the time you know it, you're making more connections to that one thing that you have hung up more times than not.
Yeah. Or another thought I had just is like people start asking you about it.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, hey, what's that mean up there?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I get to talk about my idea again. And they may know someone that helps you get to that idea.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool point that you brought up there. So we talked about that major hardship that you had early on in your life. And I know that this isn't true for any of us, that we've always had people in our life that have helped us get to the spots that we're at. There's no self-made person, I don't believe. But also B, that it's not just all sunshine and roses even when you become successful. So any hardships later in life as you've gone through here that have been some bumps in the road?
Oh man, all the time. I think that's one thing, a lot of people fail to see successful people, and I'm not saying I'm successful by any means, but if you look at some of the people I look up to, I think, man, they must have life by the balls. But then you dig deep, and they're going through dark spots at times. It's just how fast they can pull out of them. And I think that's the thing is I hit dark spots a lot, but it's how fast I can withdraw them now. I used to get caught in them a lot longer than others. And I think, people, the same thing. It's just how fast you bounce back from them.
Yeah. It's that bounce back rate.
It is.
I should talk about that a lot with my advisors. Like, you get told no a lot. How quick do you bounce up?
Exactly.
It's okay to be told no. That's actually my second favorite answer.
Yeah.
Because it's a decision.
Yeah.
Right? Riding the fence of indecision. I always told clients or people that I'm trying to recruit or whatever it may be, I want to arm you with enough information to help you off the fence of indecision. Yes or no is good.
Yeah.
maybe, think about it. Any of those types of answers, not good.
Right.
I don't deal with that very well.
Right.
So simply putting yourself out there, shoot your shot and see where it lands. But I always said that, I was like, I want to arm you with enough information so that you feel like you're making a good, educated decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd rather fail so I get quicker to the right answer, rather than trying to, pedal around the no, scared to fail, so scared to fail that you won't fail. I'd rather fail so I can learn the right way faster.
Yeah. No, that's really good. So what do you value in mentorship? Like any great mentors that you have currently or that you met, and maybe you don't necessarily want to call them out by name, maybe you do, but I'm thinking about like, what are those characteristics that you look for in a great mentor right now or have in the past?
Honesty. I look for someone that you can go to, whether it's, really any time, not someone that's, schedule a call with me and so. If you really need their time and attention, being able to reach out to them. So those are two things that I really value. And I think those are most important to me in any aspect of my mentorships, whether it be in business, real estate, or personal.
So honesty, accessibility, essentially.
Yep.
And then probably transparency is kind of what I heard there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's really cool. Do you do mentoring?
I do, on a small scale, not like any of my mentors are mentoring me.
Yeah. So is that something that you aspire to do?
Absolutely. I think it's important. I think that's what's got me here today is being able to reach out to, real people who care. And then second is being able to reach back.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot, my dad, he didn't have that guidance. And I think that's one of the reasons why he kind of struggled where he did, is because he didn't have that guidance. He didn't have that person he could reach to. Yeah. And had I had guidance at an earlier age, I probably would have got here a lot faster. But I didn't have that. So that's something I'm passionate about giving back. And that's why this platform also helps with that, is because we connect the individuals who are not getting the help that they think they need. They can hit a hot button and connect with mentors, life coaches, therapists, and psychologists to get additional help.
Do you think there's anything different about you that pulled you out that didn't land you back in prison? Is there anything like innate about you, or is it just where you got your mindset to somehow, or was there someone key in your life that pulled you up?
No, but maybe it's just my self-worth and self-confidence talking where, maybe I don't think that I had anything special, but maybe I did. I think essentially it falls back into my dad, Had my dad not done that, would I have felt so vulnerable to where I didn't want to be back in that same position? Who's to know? I can say this, that I'm not, my education is horrible. My reading and writing skills are none, but I can still manage to grow, multiple 7-figure businesses. And you don't necessarily need to have all the smarts in the world. You can hire someone for that, right? You don't need to be a dentist to own a dental office, right? You just open an office and hire a dentist and start running business. So it's just for me, I think if anybody's looking for something special, it's being resilient, and finding a different way and not letting limitations get in front of you.
That's really good. And the reason I wanted to go back and ask that is because I feel like sometimes people are like, oh no, he's just special.
Yeah.
Or there's just something about him, or someone helped him out, and this other person down the road, they just didn't have that.
Yeah.
And that's why I just wanted to hear it from your lips, because, I haven't had that impact. I've been in plenty of trouble throughout my days. My dad whooped my ass plenty of times, but I didn't end up in prison, thank God. But that's why I wanted to hear it from your lips versus just assuming something. Yeah,
I think if someone to say, am I special? I think I'm special enough to try to pave the way for others, to continue to fight the front line. That even if I die on the front line trying to save the mental health crisis, people can, step over me and say, he's the one who got us this far.
Yeah. No, it's such a noble thing. Have you found with any of your research why it's such a kind of a silent killer, or why we don't talk about it so much?
It's funny, and I think there's so many reasons, but the biggest one is stigma. When do we go talk about we're going to go see a therapist or psychologist? We're more prone to say mentors, but that's for higher people. And there's a lot of people that need mentors. They ain't got them because they don't have the money or the time, or essentially the money. But I think it's stigma. If you Google mental health, you'll see a lot of dark pictures come up, right? But if you Google physical health, you'll see pictures with six-pack abs, hot chicks and stuff like that. And I think there's just so much stigma that when you talk about mental health, you automatically think mental illness. Mm-hmm. When someone goes to see a therapist, you automatically think, is it court-ordered? And I think that's what we need to remove ourselves from and start seeing it as something that's healthy and something that it is in need.
Yeah. No, I agree. Maybe we just got to start painting six-pack abs on brains.
That's right. That's right.
And then...
It's a muscle, ain't it?
There. It is. Very much so. And it's the most important one to continue to flex.
But yet we neglect it the most.
Yeah. That's why. So my dad was always really, really passionate about this. And anyone that knows my father knows that he can just get fired up and on one, and you're not going to slow him down. But he's really passionate about saying, you are your number one priority. I am my number one priority. And so many times people take that as, oh, that's a really selfish thing. That's a really egotistical thing to say.
Yeah.
But it's actually not if you know the context of it.
Yeah.
Is if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. It's the very same reason, I think I've said this before on the show, is like when you hop on an airplane, they tell you put on your oxygen first, because if you can't breathe or if you're dead or passed out, you're not helping anyone next to you.
That's right.
So it's the very same thing with mental health, like our conversation going here is we have to take care of ourselves. We have to take the time for ourselves. And whether you're as busy as a business owner or as a mom taking care of multiple kids, we've got to figure out ways to take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think that's also part of it. I think money and cost is a big thing. Even if someone wanted help, there's a lot of people that right now they're too busy, can't take any clients. And then, it's the cost. A therapy session can cost anywhere from $100 to $250. If you have insurance, it can cost anywhere from $30 to $80, but it's a matter of finding a therapist or psychologist that actually takes insurance. And then once you find someone that actually takes insurance, which is a very rare occasion, you're still paying that $30 or $80 copay, which can still add up if you're seeing them on a weekly basis. Yeah. But then on top of that, for your insurance to continue to cover it, a lot of times the therapist or psychologist has to label you as something for your insurance to continue. Now, what happens when you label someone? You limit someone.
And limit them, yeah.
You limit them. If I tell you you're depressed, like you're clinically depressed, you're going to start believing at some point in time, like, fuck, maybe I am just really depressed. Like anything that you're going through, I'm just depressed. And you start believing and you start living that.
Which it is a chemical imbalance. And there is a clinical diagnosis of depression. But you're right on the thought process where as soon as that label hits, because of that stigma, it just perpetuates the problem even further.
Right, because thoughts are real, right? You manifest these things, right? You start to manifest these thoughts, whether they're good or bad.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about manifestation is that you're manifesting whether you like to think it or not.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing. And I actually shout out to the employee assistance programs out there. I read a stat that was pretty sobering related to this topic so employee assistance or life assistance programs that are through health insurance provided by companies, like Northwestern Mutual has one. We can call an 800 number if we have issues, whether it's domestic abuse, whether it's mental illness, whether it's marital struggles, whatever it might be. Less than 10%, not just at our company, there's a stat I read nationwide. Of all the companies that have these programs, less than 10% are actually being used.
It's crazy.
Which is so like most of this is paid for by your group health insurance.
Yeah.
You get like I think with ours you get in marital counseling, I know like 8 sessions for 8 sessions for your spouse or partner, and then 8 together. That's 24 sessions paid for you. So like you said, cost may be prohibitive. Well, if you're just checking into these programs that your employer might have for you, cost might not be the issue. Sure. And then once those free sessions are up, you can choose to invest in those sessions or not. But you're right, so cost may be an issue in some cases, but in others, like let's explore the resources that we actually have out there.
Yeah.
And then while Josh Shaw here and his team go to build this platform that will make it affordable for everyone, in the meanwhile, let's check out and make sure we're utilizing and maximizing the resources we have.
Absolutely. No.
So you're talking about manifestation and stuff like that. Let's talk about complacency. We get stuck in comfort. And I know that you said you've hit plateaus. You didn't use the word complacency. I guess that's my word. Beyond the books, was there anything different that you did to make a switch? Any negative or positive thoughts you had in those transition periods?
You know, I realized that I had a little spending habit, right? So as I thought, like, fuck, like, my God's probably not going to give me what I really want, like a bunch of money, because he's like, you got to get your spending shit out of control, right? So I'm like, maybe I need to get my spending shit out of control before I start asking for more. And I did that. And actually, it's funny enough, because once I did, that's when I started seeing more an abundance of stuff. But as far as complacency, you know, I also started to realize, like, man, maybe I'm getting fooled by success, because a lot of times we can do that. We can hit that big deal, or we can do whatever it is, and all of a sudden we look like the star of the office, and we start to fall back, right? And it's really, you know, whether you hit or miss, and I say this all the time, whether you hit or miss your target, it's always important to step back and reflect, right? How did I miss? How did I hit this target? What steps did I actually take? And then being able to identify them, taking them out, and then apply them to the next shot.
That's great. That's really good. So who told you had a spending habit, or how'd you identify that?
I just realized that. Strip clubs and what have you. It's like, you just spend your money ridiculously. Of course, I was young too, but like, you know, I was just like, you know, I like nice shit, you know, but then I started to realize, like, do I really need this? You know, is this like, get my shit under control, start putting your money in other places, you know, start making your money work for you.
Was that at a time you were around people that were making more than you? Were you trying to keep up with the Joneses? I was at my plateau where I was making more than peers and things like that. And so you were spending because
you know,
others
we'd go out to dinner. I'm like, I got her, guys.
Yeah.
You know, shit like that, which I still like doing. Don't get me wrong, but it was a point to where I'm like, I need to get it out of control. I need to get it under control.
Yeah, and I mean, my job is to develop financial advisors. So like, we're teaching people this isn't just a singular problem. This is an American problem.
Absolutely.
Like, we spend far too much. We're caught up in consumerism and keeping up with the Joneses. That's kind of why I asked you that question, is like, just everything we see is to spend. So you don't feel like you're enough. Don't feel like you're enough. Spend on this and you'll feel like you're enough. Like, no, it's not the case. Like,
right.
you got to have your own house in order, because it's only going to lead down a bad spiral if you end up broke, or if you end up not able to accomplish goals like starting your own business, starting a website, or starting a charitable platform that, you know, was your life's passion, but you never got to it because you spent it all on whatever.
That's right.
You know, so we got to get that under control.
What does Brad say? He goes, I used to spend a bunch of money to impress people, that if I had it all back, it would impress people.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, that's really good.
It is.
That's really,
it's true.
I mean, it's a really good epiphany, because how many times are we, like, you know, like you just said, I got caught up in this. Now, this was family, but as I started making good money, I knew I'm the oldest of four. Like, I would just, like, if we're out at the bars or something, like with my brothers, like, I got it.
Yep.
And it wasn't to impress them. It was like, I actually, like, was being the older brother. Like, I knew I was making more money at that time. Like, you know, I got it. And it wasn't necessarily, and sometimes, like, that could even take away from them too. Like, they're almost like they got emasculated by me. Like, and that wasn't even what I was trying to do. I was just trying to be the older brother.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes you can get caught up in that. And it's like, just making sure you set some boundaries for yourself.
Absolutely.
That you live by. And then possibly, if it's family like that, you're just explaining to them, you know, here's my boundaries and here's why I'm doing this, because I don't want to A, take away from you or emasculate you, or B, be like look like the big shot. You know, that's not what I'm trying to do. You know, so I think a lot of people can get caught up on that. So I appreciate your vulnerability.
Absolutely.
in talking about it. So you touched on this briefly, and I love the word legacy. And you're such a young guy, and you've accomplished quite a bit, and you're building this platform, I think, that could possibly change the world. What are your thoughts on legacy? What legacy do you want to leave? What does it mean to you?
Man, you know, legacy to me just means live to my full potential, or try to. I don't think I'll ever live to my full potential, because, you know, your full potential is always just kind of moving
target
forward. Yeah. So just living to my full potential and getting people to see and find their own full potential.
That's awesome. Living to help others to achieve that's something I can get fully behind. That's one of my passions, is helping others achieve their dreams. This is where I formed that as my mission statement over a decade ago.
Yeah.
And it's never changed. So my dream is to help others achieve their dreams. And why? And that seems like, so out there, like, because I just talked about putting yourself first. Well, that's true to who I am, right? So that's it is putting myself first, because it does. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm still anyone that really knows me, I'm one of the most competitive mother effers out there. Like, I don't care if it's euchre, Monopoly, game of basketball, whatever. I'm gonna try and win. But I'm also selfless in the fact that I want to help others achieve whatever their dreams are.
Right. Well, you got to lead by example, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's the only way to lead, by example. How can I tell you to live to your full potential if I'm not?
Agreed. So who are you living for now?
Who am I living for now?
Yeah, who are you living for in that full potential? Who are you trying to lead right now?
I think right now it's it's everyone that's involved in the mental health crisis. That's what I'm living for right now. Truly, and sometimes I find myself in it, like it's such a big mission. It's something that it's so huge to tackle that sometimes you can get caught up in it. Like, fuck, am I crazy? Or is this something I need? Like, do I need EST, electric shock therapy? Like, do we need to go back 30 years ago and start shocking people? I'm thinking to myself, like, am I that crazy, or is this something that's actually needed? And then I get lost, and you got to find yourself again. So I'm living that to where sometimes I need to pull myself back out and just get back up, because it's such a hard thing to tackle that you can almost get tackled, and swallowed.
Do you envision your siblings, yourself, a younger version of yourself, your dad, when you come back to this point of tackling this? I mean, do you try and center yourself on that when you think about the thought that you just had of, this is such a big thing, am I even going to make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my dad's probably the biggest one. I wonder. I just wonder, some of the struggles that he was going through. I mean, he was probably about around my age when he committed suicide, and I ain't got it figured out by any means. And I can just imagine, he had 4 kids. I mean, a good portion of his check was going to child support, and he was going through so much that I just wonder, what did he need? I just go back to, like, what did he need? I was in prison. I'm sure he felt like a failure at some point in time, because it's like, was it my fault that he's in prison? You just don't know what he's going through, and I feel like I try to step into his shoes a lot. Like, what did he need so I can help create it now? Because I'm sure that wherever there's a need that he needed, I'm sure there's millions out there that need the same thing right now.
So this is a hard question for me to ask, because it's a tough one. Mm-hmm. So I don't mean it because we don't know each other that well, but do you hold any resentment towards your father?
No, I mean, there's things that I think about, like, just come up. I'm like, and again, like, it was what he was taught. I go back to what he was taught. It wasn't his fault. That's what he was taught, and that's what his parents were taught. And it comes on, but that's why something like this needs to change. We need the right information so we can teach our kids right, so we can grow as people and live to our full potential. But those are the things that he was taught. So how can I fault him? He wasn't doing it. He was doing it out of love, that what he thought was right. So at times, I look back, I'm like thinking, that was kind of where did he learn it from? And I don't hold it against him. Yeah. I just hold it against our human nature.
Yeah. Because I've talked with other people that have lost loved ones to suicide, and I feel like there's almost 2 paths. There's one where they hold a lot of resentment, and how could they leave me? And then the other path, which it sounds like you've chosen, of either the mental illness was so great and they didn't know any other way out. They thought that was going to be easiest for everyone, even though another person could sit there and be like, how could they think that? You have 4 little kids, right? But there's really not an in-between. Like, either people hold a lot of resentment towards that loved one, or they have figured out a way that they know is either the illness or it was what they were taught to, like you said in your words, that they didn't know any better.
Yeah. No, it's definitely the latter for me.
Yeah. So thanks for your vulnerability there. Like,
absolutely.
Was, a question I didn't know how it was going to go. Could slap me across the table.
No. I'm an open book, and that's how I believe that everyone should truly live their life. Because once they let all that egotistic shit go, I mean, that's where they'll find the most growth.
Yeah, I agree. So, when is this tool going to be available for everyone?
So right now we created one of the first interactive programs within this mental wealth investments, and it's called Ice Cold Confidence. Because again, self-esteem and confidence, they've been linked to over 20 psychological disorders. And I believe that by becoming more confident and having more self-worth, you can possibly prevent 20 or more of these disorders. So that's why we created the self-esteem confidence program first. It's called Ice Cold Confidence, and the reason it's called Ice Cold Confidence is because it's broken down into 3 easy steps, which is identify, which is for the I, challenge, which is for the C, and then execute is for the E. So we go in and we identify your unique confidence problems or issues and find out where they stem from, right? Because that's important. Is where you don't have them for no reason. It's not something you were born with. It's not a trait. Confidence is a skill that's learned, right? Yeah. So you've learned to live with it or without it. So if you live in without it, where did it stem from? What was it? So we identify it, and then we start to challenge and change that belief, and then we come up with a new life's plan for you to execute on.
Is that something that parents could utilize to be able to, because like you just said, that it comes from somewhere, and parents are a huge influence on a child's confidence. Is that something a parent could use? And I'm the parent of 4 children, to identify how we can raise our kids with better self-worth and self-confidence?
Absolutely. I think both in each realm. We live in a day and age where we don't think we're worth it, or we don't think we have enough confidence because we're scrolling through social media and we see everybody with better lives and better photos and stuff like that, but they're just living behind filters, right? And so it can go for the kids too who are struggling in the social media world. Then it also go for parents too, because once you start to realize, like for instance, I had an insecurity where nice watches, someone say nice watch and I automatically want to kind of cover it up, or someone say nice car and I'm like, fuck, like I didn't like that attention, but then I'm like, why don't I like the attention? And I traced it back to when I was young. My father gave me and my brother each $1, and we went to the gas station, and my brother came back with a t-shirt full of Tootsie Rolls and lollipops, and he got his money worth, and I came back with a bottle of Coca-Cola, and he scolded me. He's like, why would you buy the Coca-Cola? We have Coke here. And I kind of felt dumb, like I was spending my money stupidly, until I realized, I'm like, well, you don't have bottled Coke. Like, this is the ice cold bottle, like almost from the commercial, right? And it kind of tastes better, I'm thinking to myself. And plus, it's my fucking $1, right? So once I went back to that place and identified where that insecurity came from, I was able to release it, and I was proud of the things that I had. Mm-hmm. So again, it's going back to identifying and finding out where it's at. So for me, as a parent, if I were a parent identifying this issue, I try to realize maybe that's the type of thing that I'm pressing on my kids when I mention this or when I say this. Yeah. He was just
unintentional. He wasn't intending.
He wasn't intentional. He's just trying to get me to try to spend my money better, right? But I took it as, you're doing it wrong. Like, why? I took it a completely different way, and it traveled with me throughout these entire years, and I didn't even realize it. And that's the thing about self-confidence and self-esteem, is that you don't realize how much baggage you actually got on you until you identify it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. John Maxwell talks about that as like reflective thinking and having reflective think time, and that's really the only true measurement of learning, because we can hear something and it's like a spark, but if you don't actually reflect on what that meant to you and how you're going to apply it to your life and then possibly teach it to someone else, it's not going to stick with you. So I was just thinking, I was like, man, I don't know, what age were you about with that $1 story?
Brian, probably about 7 years old.
Okay, so 7 years old, that's a distant memory. What's your either process, or was it just a shower thought to you? Like, how do you go back to those memories to try and identify? Because someone may be struggling with, and I don't remember a lot from 7 years old because that was a really traumatic part of my life. Like, how do I, or they're just like, I don't know, I can't remember. Like, do you have a process of trying to get back to the root cause of why you feel a certain way?
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we do in the program. We take them through all those steps and processes and try to help them identify their unique self-esteem or confidence issues.
Awesome. So is that Ice Cold program ready to go now?
That's ready to go. They can find it at icecoldconfidence.com, or they can go to mentalwealthinvestments.com, and there's a link for that Ice Cold Confidence program there.
And so you guys are just going to continue to roll out programs as you develop them?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so you ready for the word game?
Let's go.
All right. So we told you already, so everyone in the audience, reminder, I'm going to give him a word. There's going to be about 8 to 10 words. He's got one word response or short phrase and cannot repeat himself. Adversity.
Youth.
Vision.
100 mil.
It's your vision. I love it. Money.
Potential.
Happiness.
Success.
Authenticity.
Me.
Risk.
Life.
Hunter.
Social media.
Got Hunter in the room. He likes it. Relationships.
Wife.
Great. Inspire or inspiration.
I already said life. I'm gonna have to say dad.
I like it. Impact.
World.
All right. Good answers. Good job.
Thanks.
Good job. All right. So I asked you before the show, but what is a favorite book of all time or most current that you want to give a shout out to?
So, yeah, I think it would have to be The Alchemist. The Alchemist is probably one of my favorites. It's more of a story, kind of personal development.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, it really kind of throws you for a loop, and it gets you thinking about your own life and your own journey. But current right now would also be Get Smart. It's something I'm completely wiping out. I'm liquidating everything. I'm gonna make big power moves due to this book.
Interesting. Who's it by?
I forget who it's by, but
we'll look it up. We'll get it on the notes. But Get Smart, because that's not one I heard of yet. So I'll add it to my list as well.
Yeah.
That's cool. So how can our guests follow you, get a hold of you, and make sure that they're following the progress of this website?
So Instagram's probably my biggest handle that I use, and it's Iam.jshaw.
All right.
Iam.jshaw.
And then repeat the websites again for the mental health wellness.
IceColdConfidence.com for the self-esteem confidence program, and then they can also find it on mentalwealthinvestments.com.
Perfect. I just want everyone to continue to follow you, because like we talked about before, like we've both got a passion around mental illness and making sure that we can combat this crisis. Like, I think it would be inspiring for all of us to combat this crisis, like we all come together for cancer causes.
Absolutely.
I mean, for the runs that, breast cancer causes I did Man of the Year for LLS, and the money that we raised towards that, if we could treat mental illness and think of mental illness in that same vein to combat and hopefully kick the ass of both cancer and mental illness, I think that then we can actually start saying we're making some traction, some headway.
Absolutely.
Because I think about that even from the next step is like, if we got more mentally healthy people making more money, we can make an even bigger dent in cancer.
Absolutely, for sure. I mean, suicide rates are on the rise, and it's probably the leading cause in younger teens now, and it's beyond me.
Second leading in death next to cancer.
Yeah, it's huge, and it takes so many healthy people, which is it's crazy,
Well, I really appreciate your vulnerability today. I mean, everybody think about this. So Josh Shaw from the penitentiary to sitting in this office today, dropping wisdom on us, as well as giving us a platform to help anyone that we love ourselves get mentally healthy. You're an inspiring man. Thanks
Josh,
for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.